Omaha's news leader, chronicling the stories and people making a difference in our community. This is KETV Newswatch 7's Chronicle.
Good morning, I'm Rob McCartney. Thanks for joining us for Chronicle. Tomorrow, the United States commemorates Memorial Day, a day where we remember and honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Across the metro, wreaths will be laid at places like Memorial Park, seen here. And throughout the country, people will stop and thank veterans who laid down their lives fighting for the United States. You know, each year, Offutt Air Force Base hosts a Memorial Day service at the base's cemetery. Also at Offutt is U.S. Strategic Command, now under the command of Air Force General Anthony Cotton. General Cotton has served in a wide variety of roles in the Air Force since joining in 1986. He's been a commander at the squadron, group, wing, and major command levels. And right before coming to STRATCOM, General Cotton led the Air Force's Global Strike Command at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. Well, recently, I sat down with General Cotton. It was the first television news crew in the commander's office, and we talked about STRATCOM and its biggest threats. All right, General, first off, I just want biggest threats right now, Russia, China, North Korea. Exactly how dangerous are they?
Well, I think, Rob, one of the things that we're dealing with is for the first time since the advent of the nuclear weapon, the United States and our allies are facing two peer adversaries, with the acute threat being Russia and a pacing threat and pacing challenge, if you will, being the PRC. So for the first time, we have to look at it from that perspective. So what we're talking about is not a war against terrorism, which we'll always have to deal with something like that. But we're talking about peer actors now two. So it's not where we're facing one challenge, but we're facing at least two that are peer adversaries in PRC and Russia.
And so Russia obviously is involved in Ukraine, and they've been doing some nuclear saber rattling, I believe is what you've called it before. China's also been standing up more ICBMs, is that right? Or?
Yeah, so China, what we're seeing is, and my predecessor articulated it as well, we call it the breakout, and where we're seeing just the incredible growth of their nuclear arsenal. So they are a bona fide triad. They have a land base, they have a sea base, and they have an air leg as well. So we're seeing that grow in great numbers here over the past 4 or 5 years that we hadn't seen in the past.
Modernization. It's been a key word in the fight for more money from Congress. I mean, past commanders here at STRATCOM that I've interviewed have said the same thing. Which area, in your estimation, is most critically in need of modernizing?
All of them.
All of them. So meaning?
So foundationally, what we're talking about here is I have the benefit, and my predecessor had the benefit as well, of seeing all legs of the nuclear triad be modernized. All legs of the nuclear triad needs to be modernized. The good news is our legacy systems are still safe, secure, effective, and credible. Credible is foundation to deterrence. But that being said, the modernization is something that we have to do. And I'm happy to say that we're funded to be able to do that. I wish I could tell you that it'd be done tomorrow. A lot of these are going to take a decade or even longer because of the extent of what we're talking about and the type of weapon systems we're talking about on being able to have everything in my grasp, if you will, as a commander and available. So what we're really working on is what does that transition look like as we work from our legacy systems that are still credible systems today and make that transition into the modernized, modern systems that we'll see tomorrow.
Right. And those modern systems such as?
Okay, so we'll start off with the B-21 Raider. Looking forward for her to be she'll be the preponderance of the bomber force for us and the United States Air Force. As we will start divesting our legacy systems. The modernization of the B-52, she will be known as the B-52J, re-engined, updated cockpit, updated radars, modernized platform that will be with us to the 2050s. And I will tell you, she's a bulldog. She'll be able to withstand 2050 with no problem, as long as we get the modernization efforts underway for the B-52, which we're doing right now. The other aspects, I'll stay on the flight side of things. Our venerable UH-1N, which is our Huey helicopters that are up in our missile fields, are going to be replaced with a Boeing helicopter known as the MH-139 Gray Wolf. We should see her start making its way to the missile fields here in the next couple of years. Really excited about that. Gives us a lot of efficiency, gives us speed, gives us range. The capability is pretty endless compared to what we're currently seeing with the UH-1N, so we're happy about that. Moving on to speaking of missiles, the Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile is being replaced with what we call the Sentinel.
Right.
It's more than just a missile replacement. It's the entire weapon system replacement. We're really excited about that. So the launch center will be upgraded. The launch facility that contains the missile itself will be totally renovated and updated, basically giving us an open architecture that was not seen in the current system that we have. What that does is gives us the ability to modernize and actually keep up with the changes in threat. Just like you see with fighters, if you will.
Right.
You know, you'll start off with an A version, and then you'll end up having a variant that goes B, C, D. That's really what we're talking about, because for the first time, Rob, the ICBM system was designed to have an extended life expectancy, a long lifetime. So having that open architecture enables us to be able to have such a large weapon system that has such a big footprint and in placement to be able to keep up with the times and do that with the effectiveness for what I would say our young maintainers to be able to maintain that. And then the last leg is the replacement of the Ohio class SSBNs with the Columbia, and that's we're looking forward to that as our third leg of the triad, moving out into the early 40s. So as you can see, we're talking about the weapon system that's air being modernized, the ground base being modernized, and the sea base being modernized. And then finally, on the air component is the air-launched cruise missile will also be replaced with the long-range standoff weapon that we have. So a lot on the plate for my components in both the Air Force and the Navy, as they start to deliver and present those forces to me.
In your confirmation hearing, you said, if confirmed, I will use my authorities to ensure that the NC3 systems continue to outpace the threat. How can you do that, and how far behind the threat, or are we behind the threat?
No, I would first caveat to say I don't think we're behind the threat.
Okay.
I think as the enterprise lead for the Department of Defense on nuclear command and control and communications, we here in STRATCOM have done a couple of things. We've been able to actually map out our entire NC3 system and understand it to the point where we can, and I would call it a kind of a living organism. Okay. It's not going to be something it's no different than a basic comm system, even though it's much more complex than that. But what I mean by that is you will always be able to modernize, and you will always have to be able to modernize and update with the state-of-the-art things moving forward. Now, that's what we're going to try to build into NC3 as we continue, because it's foundational to what we are. All of those other modernization programs that I talked about, without that link, is worthless. So we know how important that is. The good news is the support that I have from senior leaders on ensuring that we get the dollars that we need, the talent that we need to be able to ensure that we do that and modernize that system and maintain it and transition it from what you heard me say earlier, legacy systems to more modern systems, stays on track. I'm thankful for the men and women that are doing that as well.
Has been and continues to be concern about communications being disrupted, possibly in the electromagnetic spectrum. You've stood up the Joint Electromagnetic Operations Center. How are we doing in the electromagnetic spectrum?
Yeah, so that is another field in which we're the enterprise lead for the Department of Defense.
Sure.
So yet another mission set that's being added here for STRATCOM, which I'm proud to say that we're taking that and running with it. In regards to electromagnetic spectrum, it's one of the things that we have dominance in that in the Department of Defense and the United States. We just need to make sure that we don't lose reps and sets in maintaining that dominance. No different than air dominance or space dominance. It's an effect that is something that we absolutely must have. We have to have the understanding of the spectrum to be able to execute what we need to execute, not only within Strategic Command, but all commands within the Department of Defense. So really excited about getting after that.